Welcome to Mom and Dad Are Fighting, Slate's parenting podcast for Thursday, October 12th, the Help, My Niece Might Be a Racist edition. I'm Jamilah Lemieux, a writer, contributor to Slate's Care and Feeding Parenting column, and mom to Naima, who's 10, and we live in LA.
I'm Zach Rosen. I make another podcast. It's called The Best Advice Show, and I'm dad to Noah, who's 6, and Ami, who's 3. We live in Detroit.
I'm Elizabeth Newcamp. I write the homeschool and family travel blog Dutch Goose. I'm the mom of 3 littles, Henry, who's 11, Oliver, who's 9, and Teddy, who's 7. We live in Tokyo, Japan.
Today on the show, we have an interesting question from a listener who discovered that their niece doesn't believe racism exists. The niece lives in Europe. Our listener lives in the U.S. and wants to help educate this 13-year-old. We're also going to catch up on our week in parenting, and then, if you're in the Slate Plus Club, we're going to be playing a game based off Arnold Schwarzenegger's weird parenting tactics. Here's what you'll hear if you have Slate Plus. Okay, once Arnold Schwarzenegger threw his daughter's shoes into the fireplace and burned them after she failed several times to put the shoes away properly.
You didn't put them away properly.
Are we burning shoes?
No. Shoes are too expensive to burn. My kids' shoes are so expensive.
Shoes are expensive.
We're not even buying nice shoes.
No.
Arnold, you've overstepped.
So expensive?
I don't have the money to burn their shoes.
No. By becoming a Slate Plus member, you'll enjoy a weekly bonus segment in all your beloved Slate podcasts without any advertisements. It's the ultimate way to enhance your listening experience while also providing vital support to the show. You can join Slate Plus today by visiting slate.com/momanddadplus. All right, we're going to jump into triumphs and fails as soon as we get back from this short break.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all of the coverage you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies all lined up and ready to compare, so it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates. Quote at progressive.com to join over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
We're back. Elizabeth, what have you been up to this week?
All right, so last week, Teddy celebrated his 7th birthday. Yay, my youngest is 7. I don't even know how that happened, but as we often do, we decided to kind of go with some experiences instead of a big party. So we sort of asked Teddy what he wanted. And like he says many years, he says that he wanted a dog. And so here in Tokyo, you can actually rent a dog for a day. So that is what we did. We were unable to make any of the arrangements over the phone. So Jeff and I went while the kids were in school to this place, had this whole conversation using Google Translate, which is what we kind of do here, a lot of pointing. We left and we were like, okay, I think we've rented a dog. This will be fine. So Saturday comes. The plan is like, we're going to show up at this place. We're going to receive our dog. There's a nearby big park. This park is kind of known in Japan where you can actually play on the grass because in many parks here you cannot. So we're going to take the dog to this park and play. Well, we show up, we go upstairs, we check in. You come downstairs and you have to wait by this door. We're waiting by this door and out come 2 dogs, a big golden retriever and a tiny little feisty dog. And hooked to the dogs are 2 leashes each. So we have 2 dogs, 4 leashes, and we're not sure how long. And we kind of take these dogs into the park. Teddy had the time of his life. They're are not
Did
really.
they tell you anything? Did they say like,
Nope.
just take these dogs? Don't...
That we know. I should always say, like,
Right.
I'm sure they told us all the things we were supposed to know. I had sort of joked with a friend, maybe we rented 2 dogs because they kept saying something about a friend. Teddy really wanted a golden retriever, which there are not really big dogs here. Most people have very small dogs. And in fact, they treat their dogs like children. They have strollers for them and they wear them in baby carriers. And it's kind of a big thing here. The Japanese are kind of having less children, but are very into these small dogs. But the whole time we were standing there, they kept telling us about a friend. We like sort of thought maybe it was because we had so many kids, because they, you have to tell them like how many people. No, apparently this whole time they were telling us that this golden retriever has to go with this very feisty little dog friend. Teddy had the time of his life, and everybody in the park wants to pet these dogs. I was very concerned that maybe we had somehow adopted the dogs. And they did. They gave us like a little bag full of treats and stuff. We played in the park for about an hour. And as we are like, okay, it's time to like head back, the big dog lays down and shuts its eyes. It's like just exhausted. And we're like, oh my gosh, are we going to have to like carry this dog back because we only had them for an hour? Like how are we supposed to get this dog back to the place of return? But we did. The big dog follows the little dog. I think that's why it has a friend. So once we got the little dog going, the big dog went along for the ride. Teddy had the best day of his life. He is like now it's like, what should we do today? We should rent a dog.
What do they charge for a double dog rental?
It's like under $100 to rent the dogs. Is what I'll say. There's a lot of things here that are very reasonable, and a lot of things like this, because they live in such small houses, there's a lot of these experiences. Like I think that's why cat cafes and animal cafes have taken off here, because there's not space, so people go spend their living space time like where you'd be hanging out in the house at these cafes. But it
must be fun for the dogs. I mean, there's excitement for these dogs every day. It's not like an owner who's like kind of, all right, another day with the dog.
Tuesday.
Yeah, it's just a Tuesday. Tuesdays are fun for these dogs.
I just hope no one had to rent the dog after us. It seems like we exhausted this dog. But I agree. Cute. I mean, the dogs are the good news is like they are so friendly. We had all these people in the park coming up and they were completely unfazed.
Sounds like a good time. All right, what's going on with you, Zach?
I mean, since Saturday, we've just been kind of glued to Twitter and the news coming out of Israel-Palestine. And I wouldn't say I've been neglecting our kids, but it's been kind of taking up a lot of our, emotional and mental space, just trying to figure out what's going on there. And, this is something we talk about a lot on the show. Like, it's never too early to like have tough conversations with your kids, but I haven't been able to bring myself to talk about what's happening with Noah. Like, she heard one of us say like the word kidnap yesterday because Israelis were kidnapped by Hamas and taken back into Gaza. And she asked like, what's kidnap? And she then got distracted, so I didn't have to answer her. But it's just like, this is a very heartbreaking moment for a ton of Israelis and Palestinians. And yeah, it's just like a certain part of me is like, she's too young. She doesn't need to know about what's happening. But at the same time, I do feel somewhat of a responsibility to convey the basic facts undergirding this moment. So we haven't been like secretly talking about it, Shira and I, but we also haven't kind of brought Noah or Ami into the conversation. Like Noah's cousin is, in the Israeli army. We have friends of friends who've been impacted directly. So it's a very tender moment for people with ties to Israel-Palestine. And it's certainly not a triumph. I don't know if it's a failure, but it's definitely a moment of just like deep kind of unknowing in terms of how to talk about this stuff, if at all, with the kids. She's
so emotionally intelligent. Like, I wonder if she can feel kind of the shift.
Yeah, I bet she can. Yeah.
It's hard though to know, like you said, how much to share, because you don't want her to be scared, right?
Right.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Have you thought about maybe saying there's some really bad stuff going on?
Yeah, like if she asks about it, I would, and I will, and would say it in a way that I think would be, hopefully not scary. But she hasn't yet asked. She often does. She's usually like, "What are you guys talking about?" But she hasn't. So maybe she does have a sense that something is different, and maybe she's afraid to ask. I'm not sure. Maybe so. I don't know. This is making me think that maybe we should have more of an explicit conversation today.
Sometimes there's no right answer.
Yeah.
This feels like one of those moments.
Yeah. What's going on with you, Jamilah?
I have a triumph.
Yes.
Naima and I, we've had a hard time getting her to school on time this year. A big part of it is hair. Like she does a lot to her hair and her skincare in the morning. She does a full skincare routine and hair. As much as I try to hurry her up, we just never end. We're like constantly like 15 minutes late.
Okay.
And which is late enough to get the email. It's so embarrassing. Every time I get the email, I'm like, oh God, I got the email again. And so it's actually gotten to the point where Naima's going to be spending an extra day at her dad's house for the next few weeks. Like, just because they have an easier road because we have some challenges in the morning. Sometimes we've got some stuff. And so her dad was like, it's really important that we get her to school on time. And it just seems like that happens easier at my house. Do you think that maybe, she could do an extra day over here and we'll just see? And so like reluctantly, I agreed to that. So she's going to be with him tonight instead of me. But these last 2 days, Naima has gotten up an hour early on her own. Like, she set an alarm and she has gotten ready so early. Today we were at school because they're supposed to be there by like 8:20. And they have a before school program that she signed up for, but like she doesn't usually go when she's in my house because like when are we ever there before school?
Yeah.
We were at school today at 7:30.
Wow.
7:30. And the amazing part, what happened on Monday is that I got up, I made her breakfast, I made her lunch, and I laid back down while she continued to get ready, And so what I did is I set an alarm for like 20 minutes, like I lay down for 20 minutes and I go check on her and see like, is she dressed? Is she ready? Then I can lay down again, maybe for a few more minutes if, all is going well. She has just been doing so well. Like I didn't even have to lay back down. Just like, okay, we can just go.
All right. Congrats. That's huge. Do you sense that she feels good about herself for this?
Oh yeah. She feels great. Like she was, because today she was putting her book bag on. I was like, it's 7:04. Because like we can leave the house at like 7:55 and still be on time.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I want to go to Ready, Set, Go. That's the before school program. I was like, all right, we can go to Ready, Set, Go.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. It's
definitely a triumph.
Yeah, and so much easier when it's their idea to get things moving.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
A good life lesson. Good job. I hope it continues.
I hope so too. All right. Well, on that note, we're going to take another quick break. See you back here for our question. We're back. Let's hear today's question.
Dear Mom and Dad, my 13-year-old niece visited me this summer from Europe and has, at best, questionable views on race. We are white. Her dad is American and her mom is Central European. She has lived her whole life in a European country that is 99% white. I would sum up her views as believing racism does not exist anymore. Anyone who has a harder time in society is because of personal choices. I recognize this is a racist point of view, but I think it comes from ignorance more than maliciousness. I know her mom has tried to talk to her about it, but she's at the age where whatever mom says is not worth listening to. Unfortunately, she probably formed this opinion from her dad. She really looks up to me, and I think I have an ability to impact her life, even though I don't see her in person that often. What age-appropriate things would you recommend I investigate with her to expose her to the reality of structural and general racism, especially in America? She just turned 13. She loves to read and is very smart, loves Lord of the Rings. We also just listened to a couple of podcasts while she was here, and she seemed to like that. But I think books are probably more her thing. Thanks. Limited time, lots of influence.
All right, Zach, what do you think?
Well, I know you don't see her much, but when she does come, I mean, America is such a good place to drive around and learn about structural racism. Like, I don't know how close you live to a city, but I imagine if you're in these United States, you're not far from being able to do a pretty cool field trip where she can see how disparity looks in our country. So, I mean, so that's the first thing. When she visits next, like, plan a cool field trip. But you asked specifically for books. So I've got a couple ideas. One of them is called Into the Streets, A Young Person's Visual History of Protest in the United States. And it's I'm going to describe the summary of the book. It's a visual voyage of resistance through American history, where you can discover the artwork, music, fashion, and creativity of the activists, meet the leaders of the movements, and learn about the protests that helped shape the United States from all sides of the political spectrum. There is another book called Black Enough, Stories of Being Young and Black in America, and it's an anthology by YA authors, people like Jason Reynolds, an amazing writer. So you can get, you might gift her that for her next birthday, or, whatever gift holiday, Hanukkah, Christmas you celebrate. Movies, Fruitvale Station. Like, I was thinking about just like contemporary movies, so she can like learn about somewhat, current landscape of what's happening. That's Fruitvale Station was Ryan Coogler's first movie about Oscar Grant, who was killed by police in the Bay. There's also the 13th, the Ava DuVernay documentary about the 13th Amendment. I mean, there's no shortage of really good books and movies, and also just like conversations, like, talking to her in ways that you're not telling her she's a racist, but like asking questions and asking how she arrived at ideas is, of course, a good way to have conversations with kids.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I was thinking that a child this age often, I think, has a hard time with the information being presented in a way that's like, absorb this information, this is good for you. But if she likes to read, there are a whole host of books that sort of delve into these stories or the general idea of systematic racism, or just exposing her to stories from other lives and things that are happening that are outside of her experience. And I would suggest that you read these along with her. Like, do kind of a book club, send it, you read it too, because I think that the discussions that can come from some of these books, I have a list of some of the ones we've read that are really great, but I also want to say that Blossom and Root, which is a curriculum company, their 5th grade language is about narrative voices and like different stories, and their list is excellent. So you can check that out. Some of these books are on there, but there's a whole bunch, and it focuses on stories from a host of different backgrounds. We did this last year with Henry as part of our homeschool. And what I think it gave him was this larger picture of what other people about his age have and are experiencing from all different parts. The stories do mainly focus on experiences in the United States, coming to the United States, being in the United States, but there are some from other places as well. I also really like a friend of the show, Amber, who runs the Heritage Mom blog, has some great curriculum packs as well. And when I say curriculum packs, like, one, you could just go and look at the literature list. But if you're looking for like questions or activities you could do with these aimed at kids that are, 12, 13, 14, they have those as well. So that might be something to invest in. But some of our favorite books on this topic that are not quite like on the nose, but are more going to talk about sort of the experience are the book Take Back the Block, which is about gentrification, a book called Ghost Boys, where a Black boy is killed by police officers, and kind of the story of that. There's a book from the desk of Zoe Washington about the main character's father is in jail, and she's kind of trying to solve the case and see what's going on. Of course, there's the classic Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, which to me was, I think, the first book I remember reading that sort of drove everything home in this very narrative way.
Was it Roll
it was
of
very
Thunder?
moving.
Roll of Thunder, Hear
Roll
My
of Thunder,
Cry.
Hear My Cry.
Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. You know how there are books that like just stick with you as this moment in which your brain changed? That this is one of those for me. We also really like the book Front Desk by Kelly Yang. And in fact, Henry liked that one so much that he read the whole like trilogy on his own. If you want something more on the nose, we also really liked This Book is Anti-Racist by Tiffany Jewell. And there's a guided journal to go with this one. But this one is nice because it has like 50 activities you can complete, which if you think she might be into that, that's again something you can do together, even if you're not like physically together. Most of the exercises are either reflecting on things in your community. I think that would be great because you're here in the States, she's in Europe, being able to share some of that. Having lived in Europe, racism absolutely, obviously exists there as well. Though I'm not sure exactly where she is. I could take some guesses, but it's not as, I think, in your face because the population is so white. But it might be a really good way to talk about like, hey, not only is this happening in America, like this is very much happening where you are as well. Oh, I had two other quick things, which is do a virtual field trip. I don't know, my kids love these, but the National Civil Rights Museum has great resources online, and a good place to start there is the Privilege Aptitude Test. You guys could take it together and discuss it. I think that's really great. But there's also like you can click through exhibitions and art and all kinds of cool stuff. Same goes for the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. They have a wonderful online presence that is something you guys could be on Zoom or on the phone and doing together. I just think the more of this that can be like, hey, this is a discussion and something fun that we're doing, but also learning, and be open to hearing what she has to say might be a better way to expose her to things and correct some of these viewpoints than sort of a lecture format of some kind. I don't know. Jamilah, what do you think?
It's great.
I think these suggestions are all great. Those are great books and movies that I think will be helpful. I keep thinking the only book I want to add is, for you to read How to Raise an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. So even though you're not raising her, you are, an adult who wants to be a person of influence in her life. So I think it would be helpful to guide some of your conversations and prepare you for some of the questions she may ask and some of the, blind spots that she has. I'm curious to know what you two are thinking about the parents.
I think that's a good question. And I do really think that I'm sure people are going to disagree, which is fine, but that the prevailing attitude in Europe is one of, this is something that happens in America. We dealt with this and are above this, even though that is not true, because they are not faced with, it's just like more a part of our history and something that we're talking about a lot, right? Like the bad news about what's going on in America is that we are taking some backtracking on this, but the good news is as a result, it is very in our face, right? Like, what are we doing about curriculums? What are we doing about how we tell our story? And I think in Europe, it's less about that, even though, World War II is a story of racism. Like all of the immigration stuff happening in Europe right now is based in racism and being scared of people coming from Africa, from the Middle East into these communities, and how do they deal with that? Like, these things are happening. I just think the prevailing attitude there is sort of like, this isn't like America has this problem. We don't have this problem.
All right. Well, limited time, lots of influence. Please give us an update. I'd love to hear how this turns out, what resonates with your niece and what doesn't. Thank you for writing in. And for fellow listeners, if you have a question of your own, please reach out. Email us at momanddad@slate.com or call 646-357-9318. Seriously, we need your questions, so send them on in. That is our show. Subscribe, leave a rating and review, and tell your friends. This episode of Mom and Dad Are Fighting was produced by Rosemary, Belson, and Maura, Currie. Shasha Leonard is the voice of our listeners. Alicia Montgomery is the VP of Slate Audio. For Elizabeth Newcamp and Zach Rosen, I'm Jamilah Lemieux. Thanks for listening.
It's time to get your checking account to zero with free checking from PenFed. That's zero ATM fees, zero balance requirements, and zero time spent waiting for your paycheck to direct deposit because you can receive it up to 2 days early. Open your account with just $25 and see how big zero can be. Apply online today at PenFed.org/free checking. Early direct deposit eligibility may vary between pay periods and timing of payers' funding. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.
PenFed's got great rates for